Life comes at you fast in the NFL. Even though the draft only ended a few days ago, rookie minicamp is already upon us, kicking off at the VMAC on Friday. What will Rob and I be watching as the Rooks hit the field for the first time in blue and green? We'll be diving in here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang, and a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s out there, whether you're listening up north in Fairbanks, Alaska, or over in Medina, Saudi Arabia. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for tuning in. We are going to be taking a close look at the upcoming Seahawks rookie minicamp. We get to see all 11 draft picks and some exciting undrafted players on the field in blue and green for the first time. Rob and I will be detailing some storylines to watch heading into that two-day minicamp. And then we're going to have our big winners and the not-so-luckies coming out of the 2025 draft. Which veterans benefited from these 11 players coming in, and which ones might be looking in the rearview mirror concerned about their jobs. It's going to be a jam-packed episode brought your way courtesy of our friends over at Amazon with the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV. Locked On to learn more. Now for your lead story here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. They've only been members of the Seahawks for a handful of days, but Gray Zabel, Nick Emawari, and company are going to be on the field sporting Seahawks uniforms for the first time on Friday, kicking off the annual rookie minicamp. And obviously, Rob, there's not going to be any shoulder pads. There's not going to be any contact. There are strict rules, but these are still incredibly important practices. And Mike McDonald echoed this with reporters after the draft that he hopes to get more done this year. They've got more players signed up. They've obviously got more draft picks than they had last year. They've got a lot of exciting undrafted players that are going to be coming in. And I know for you in particular, anytime we talk about rookie minicamp, the focus usually shifts to the trenches. And this year, you've got a lot of players to watch on the offensive line that'll be debuting on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, obviously, including the very first pick of the Seahawks and Gray Zabel. I want to just see the way that Gray Zabel looks in his uniform. I know that sounds kind of silly, but at the same time, I just want to see him on the hoof. I want to see the leadership traits. Is he the guy that among teammates that he sounds like he is on the airwaves? I've had an opportunity now to see him in person at the Virginia Mason Athletic Center, to hear several of his interviews. He is charismatic. He's funny. He is somebody that I think that shows some of the leadership traits that, frankly, I've been kind of asking the Seahawks to try to find that kind of sheriff of the room, so to speak. I don't think that a rookie is likely to be able to seize that opportunity, but I also think that there is a possibility. I think it's definitely needed for somebody to kind of be the leader of the offensive line. And so I'm curious to see if Gray Zabel does that among the rookies. I think there's a possibility that guy winds up being a 4-year starter. One of the other 2 4-year starters of the Seahawks, of course, drafted, and Bryce Campbell or Mason Richmond, just because, again, they have not only been 4-year starters, but they've done so at a higher level in terms of where they played their college football. So, yeah, Corbin, I know that everybody's going to be looking at all the flashy skill position talent that the Seahawks brought in, but I am always, as a former offensive lineman myself, be at the high school level, but still, former offensive lineman myself, former offensive line coach myself, that is always where my eyes are going to focus on immediately.
It's been a long time since we have had a rookie that was a draft pick at the quarterback position for rookie minicamp. And I'll tell you what, after watching the quarterbacks throw last year, I will die on this hill. That was the worst quarterbacking that I have ever seen at any NFL practice those 2 days. The quarterbacks that they had last year just airmailing throws up onto the berm and overthrowing receivers, throwing into the ground. I don't remember very many catches happening because the poor receivers just didn't have any throws coming their way. So I am excited to be able to watch a third-round pick that was previously sixth in Heisman balloting in Jalen Milroe. And obviously, look, watching him run around is going to be fun, and seeing that 4.39 speed on the field, that'll be entertaining. But if Jalen Milroe is ever going to play quarterback in the NFL for the Seattle Seahawks, we need to see how he looks throwing the football. So for me, the big first storyline, watch Milroe throw. I want to see what he looks like mechanics-wise. In particular, I know that I had heard some rumblings that he has been working with a quarterback coach to try to clean up some of his footwork and mechanic issues on short passes. You don't often hear this when you hear about quarterbacks. Normally, mechanics go awry on deep balls. Jalen Milroe is the opposite. He has been incredibly accurate throwing the ball downfield. He's got picturesque mechanics. Where they betray him is on those intermediate throws and the short throws. He had less than a 60% completion rate on intermediate throws each of the last 2 years, according to Pro Football Focus, and he had more picks than touchdowns on those passes. So he has got to show improvement with his mechanics. I'm just excited to watch him, not just see how the ball comes out of his hand, but I want to look at his footwork. I want to see the way that he throws, how squared he is. I just want to look at the mechanics that he brings to the table and see if he's made improvements since an up and down Senior Bowl performance, where there were certainly some good throws and there were some throws that unfortunately looked a lot like we saw last year, where accuracy wasn't his friend.
No, it wasn't. And I am very intrigued to see the Jalen Milroe show as well. I mean, just because the fact that what a phenomenal athlete. I want to see the big arm. I want to see the accuracy or the struggles with accuracy, the work that he is putting in to improve his accuracy. Again, as I mentioned before, Gray Zabel, I also want to see some of the intangibles. This is a quarterback that was a two-time team captain at Alabama, and so I want to see him kind of seize this opportunity to kind of put his stamp on these practices. Obviously, the rookie minicamp, you're not going to see Sam Darnold there. You're not going to see Drew Lock there. So he is the top quarterback there. And so I want to see him emerge as the leader of this entire process for the Seahawks. And if he does not do that, then I think that's something to note as well. So again, I think that he is somebody that definitely is going to have plenty of eyes on him. I also want to see the players that he's going to be throwing the football to. Torrey Horton, Ricky White III, of course, were receivers that I was, kind of throwing out there as possible middle round candidates for Seattle to get those players in the, in the 5th and 7th round, respectively. Again, I think qualifies as some of the biggest steals of this draft class, not only for the Seahawks, but the entire 2025 NFL draft class. And so I want to see them demonstrate their ability. And of course, again, if I'm going to be focusing on the offensive lines I talked about before, then I want to see if any of these running backs are going to be able to splash. I want to see Robbie Oots put some people. I know you're not supposed to put people on their backsides in a mini camp, but still, I want to see Robbie Oots try, and I certainly want to see Damian Martinez and see the vision, the power, the breakaway speed. I think he has better game speed than he has speed for the 40-yard dash times kind of stuff. I want to see that speed come to prove itself when we actually see the workouts here on Friday and Saturday.
We won't get a lot of drafted defensive players to watch, and obviously Nick Amenwari is going to be a huge sight for me, not literally and figuratively. I can't wait to watch him, but I want to see how some of these undrafted rookies that the Seahawks signed in the defensive side of the football look in their first action, because when you draft 9 players out of 11 on offense and only 2 on defense, obviously Seattle's going to be a lot more enticing for defensive free agents in the undrafted ranks than it's going to be for offensive players. And they definitely got the best players in this undrafted crop on that side of the football. In particular, Jared Ivey. I'm going to have my eyes on this guy. And he's not going to be hard to miss. He's 6'6", 274 pounds. But I want to see the former All-SEC defensive end out there. I want to see how he moves. He's another guy that I don't think he's a great athlete, but I think he's a better athlete than what he tested at his pro day. I want to see what he looks like, what kind of shape that he's in out there. And I'm excited to watch a couple of corners. Zy Alexander from LSU, Isis Waxter from Villanova, and Jackson Woodard from UNLV, the linebacker. I have him and Ivy on my initial 53-man roster projection, which you can find on EmeraldCitySpectrum.com. I have both those guys right now making the 53-man roster, so I'm calling early shots with those two. But I want to see what all those players look like, because defense, that's where the undrafted players should stand out, even in these rookie mini camps. Cannot wait to watch it unfold. That'll be taking place at the VMAC on Friday and Saturday. And then we'll be heading towards full team activities soon with the start of OTAs. And then minicamp, next thing you know, training camp will be here end of July. When we come back, the NFL draft, all the discussion's been about the actual players that have been picked, but there are always a domino effect when it comes to the veterans on the roster. It can be good or bad. We're going to be looking at some of the big winners on the Seahawks veterans ranks from this draft class coming up next here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Those last-minute deals, I was able to get Avalanche playoff tickets for less than 30% of the cost they were 2 days beforehand, and you can get 60% off on a number of sporting events, concerts, comedy, and theater events. The all-in pricing means there's no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay, and you'll get to see our views from your seat before you purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to each and every one of the 12s who are tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Over the past few days, we have been breaking down Seattle's 11-player draft class. We've started to look at the undrafted free agent signings. And obviously, there's tons of excitement with this draft class. But you always have to take a step back. Once you start getting into mini camps and then OTAs, that's the first time veterans and rookies will be training together on the field. You always have to look at how the roster is impacted by the additions that are made in the draft. You have your winners. And look, I don't like the word losers. We're going to call them the not-so-luckies. There's a handful of not-so-luckies coming out of the draft, and it's this way for every single team. Let's start on the positive side of things with the big winners on Seattle's roster. And Rob, I know in particular there's one position group that you thought and I thought that the Seahawks were going to invest in at least one draft pick in, and they ended up not using any at that spot. So you've got a number of winners at one position group.
Yeah, the cornerback group. I thought that there would be at least one selection at corner. We talked about guys perhaps even in the first round if Will Johnson fell into your lap, Jahdae Barron, or whatever the case might be. Obviously, those players were available to the Seahawks, and they wound up going with Gray Zabel. John Schneider acknowledged at the end of the draft, of course, that there were some corners that were candidates for them. That just the board didn't kind of shake out the way that that allowed them to select a corner. So I do think that that it is a position of concern for the Seahawks, and one of the reasons why they focused as many resources on that position after the draft with the undrafted free agency. That said, I also think that this is very much a statement about what the Seahawks already have with Devin Witherspoon, his ability to play inside and outside. Obviously, with Tariq Woolen, he is in the final year of his rookie contract, but we've all just seen the upside that he offers. Clearly, Josh Jobe and what he was able to do just to earn a contract back with the Seahawks, to re-sign with the club, I guess I should say. And then the flashes that we've seen from last year's rookie, Nehemiah Pritchett. So to me, they are one of the big winners here, is the fact that the Seahawks did not make it more of a priority to bring in a young, talented corner to push that group. I also think that when you consider the fact that Seattle boosted some of their, the other players in the secondary, primarily with the selection of Eamon Worry, for example, then there are going to be more big play opportunities for Seattle's current cornerback. So I think the cornerback group actually wound up being kind of a sneaky winner of this entire process.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with what some might think is low-hanging fruit here, but to me, Sam Darnold was the biggest winner on the entire roster. And Seattle used 9 out of 11 picks on offensive players. They prioritized the offensive line. So they made it clear to Sam Darnold, we want to improve the pass protection for you. You go out and you get Gray Zabel in the first round, who you're hoping can immediately be an upgrade at the left guard spot. Former tackle, you're expecting that he can pass pro. You're expecting he's going to be able to protect the quarterback. And then you use 2 other picks on day 3 on experienced, proven commodities from Power 4 conferences. They believe in the players they have coming back, but these additions, I especially think with Gray Zabel, that had to fire up Sam Darnold knowing, hey, they are putting extra resources and investments into protecting me. So to me, that's the first thing. Then you get 2 players at receiver who you and I are in agreement should have been picked earlier based on their talent level. You get Torrey Horton in the 5th, a guy that's a multi-time 1,000-yard receiver at Colorado State, has great film against Travis Hunter of all people. And then you go to the 7th round, Ricky White, a special teams star, as well as a really good offensive player with back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, 11 receiving touchdowns last year. And oh, by the way, Elijah Arroyo in the 2nd round, if he's healthy. Now you got a shiny new toy at tight end that's extremely athletic and has soft hands, 1 drop his entire college career. And you have another running back that you can turn a hand to in Damian Martinez. I mean, life's looking pretty good for Sam Darnold if these guys can pan out the way that we believe they can. So to me, Sam Darnold is easily the biggest winner on either side of the football with all the investments that were made in offense, including the offensive line.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that Sam Darnold is the easy winner here. I mean, even with the Seahawks selecting their quarterback, obviously when Jalen Monroe, I mean, you're not expecting any type of the level of accuracy, understanding of the offense that Darnold possesses. And so while I think that it could be perceived by some as, that Seattle is concerned about quarterback. Otherwise, why would they use a 3rd round selection on a quarterback? I think it's a long-term investment with Milroe as far as being the primary quarterback. So I think that Sam Darnold was one of the big winners of this group. I'll go with a person actually that was also a big winner in my opinion, and that being the defensive coordinator Adam Durde. And with only 2 of the 9 draft picks dedicated to defense, then it may seem like he was not the big winner. Again, I think that this is a recognition of the fact that the Seahawks defense was playing at a very high level towards the end of last year. The fact that Mike McDowell and John Schneider didn't think that necessarily there needed to be that many more improvements. That, again, you got a player in Eamon Wari that, is a little bit of a defensive chess piece that you can kind of move around wherever that you want. And the fact that Durde, according to John Schneider, very much pushed for the selection of Riley Mills. There's not a lot of defensive coordinators out there that have that kind of juice in a building that they can push for a player like that. So, again, I think that just speaks to the respect that the Seahawks front office and coaches have for Durde. And, acknowledgement of the fact that the Seahawks defense was playing as well as it did a year ago. I do think that Durde wound up being a big winner in this process as well.
You and I were thinking in the same vein here with coaches on Seattle staff. John Benton, there's a couple pictures that were going around, and it wasn't just the Gray Zabel pick, but the picture that comes to mind was after they picked Gray Zabel. Seeing John Benton, you would have thought Colorado State. He's a Colorado State alum. I'm sure he loved the Torrey Horton pick too, but he was at a couple of their March Madness games for basketball in March. But John Benton looked like Colorado State won the national title game with how happy he was hugging John Schneider with that pick. Like, thank you. You just got a phenomenal young talent that has athleticism, a 99th percentile athlete at the guard position. Oh, by the way, and then you're going to give me 2 balls of clay that have a lot of experience, but they're still balls of clay playing the guard position. And Bryce Cabledew, who's actually a better athlete than Gray Zabel is, a 99.4% athlete. And you have another player in Mason Richmond who, while he didn't have the 40 time, he had elite agility numbers for a tackle. So he got 3 balls of clay that are super athletic that all had great zone blocking grades from Pro Football Focus last year. You turn on the tape and you can see it. They all move really well. So he gets 3 guys that he can immediately say, those are my kind of players. Bring them in. He's got some guys on the roster already to check off that box as well. But I think John Benton, you could see it in the smile. I mean, most of the time when you watch John Benton, he's your typical line coach, kind of has a strict looking face going on, but he was all smiles in that draft room with the selection of Gray Zabel and those couple other linemen in Cabledew and Richmond. So to me, he and Durde both were big winners. And you know that he had a voice in those selections as well. And that's the respect that goes to the guy that's been coaching the NFL for almost 30 years. You got to let that guy have a voice in who you're letting him pick, and getting those really athletic, zone-friendly blockers. That is a big win for John Benton. When we come back, we are going to flip the script. Unfortunately, not every veteran on Seattle's roster is feeling like Sam Darnold or the cornerback group. There's plenty of players that probably are looking like, oh, shoot, I've got to look in my rearview mirror. I got somebody sprinting for my job. We're going to be diving into the not-so-lucky veterans coming up next here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here. FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers by Steph Curry to steals from Jimmy Butler, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s tuning in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate your support. And make sure to check out my new venture, the Emerald City Spectrum, emeraldcityspectrum.com. We've got Seahawks, Sounders, Mariners, Huskies, every major pro and college team. We're even going to have the new Women's Hockey League team once they start action. We'll have that covered as well. Make sure to check it out. Just $6 a month or 19 cents a day for outstanding content from credentialed reporters. So make sure to check it out. That's emeraldcityspectrum.com. Rob, let's dive into the not so luckies. I don't want to use the word losers. I don't like that word because, look, some of these guys are still going to be on the roster, but there's always going to be players that are returning veterans who aren't feeling so good about what a team does with their draft, because most of the time it's drafting players that are immediately a threat to your position, or players who have the same skill set and bring the same strengths at a cheaper cost. And so keeping that in mind, let's talk about the not so luckies. These are the players that coming out of the draft probably aren't feeling quite as fortunate as, say, Sam Darnold or somebody like Josh Jobe is with the draft picks that were made or weren't made. Who kicks off this list for you and why?
Well, for me, the easy answer is Noah Fant. I just see Elijah Arroyo as being very similarly gifted as far as athletes. I think that he has a little bit more make you miss when he's healthy. And that, of course, is the big question. Elijah Arroyo has got to be healthy. But the fact that Seattle invested number 50 overall selection in a pass-catching tight end with top-end speed, again, is a little bit of a, hey, check yourself, Noah Fant. You got one more year remaining on your deal. You were brought in as like the big name of the Russell Wilson trade, and you have not produced much. One touchdown in the last couple of seasons for the Seahawks for a former first-round selection at tight end. Obviously, you have to be able to produce. Now, this is an offense that I think is going to lead to a great deal of production at the tight end position. But I think that Noah Fant is going to have to look impressive throughout the training camp process just to keep his name on the roster, just because I think that the Seahawks are very happy with what they saw from A.J. Bonner. I think that they're very excited about Elijah Arroyo, obviously. And I think that that's probably a little bit of hyperbole, the idea that Noah Fant wouldn't be on the roster. But again, I don't think that there's any guarantee that he's going to be your starter. And that surprises me just because of the fact that I do think that Noah Fant is among the 32 best tight ends in all of the NFL. I'm just not convinced anymore that he's the best tight end on Seattle's roster any longer.
Yeah, and he could be a trade candidate at the end of training camp early in the preseason. It depends. If you have a team that has an injury that happens and they're looking for help at tight end, then you might be able to make a move on that front and get a day 3 draft pick for next season. And they don't have as many picks as they did this year, so maybe add some capital to your treasure trove for 2026. And I think you could say maybe the same thing for right guard Anthony Bradford. He has started 20 games the last 2 seasons for the Seahawks. And look, I already would have had him on this list if we were just basing it off of the coaching staff change and some of the free agency moves that were made. I just don't feel like his skill set, and I know he tested really well, but we talked about this when Anthony Bradford came into the NFL. He's one of those players that the film didn't match the athletic testing. He was a guy that seemed to be at his best when he was knocking guys off the ball at 330 plus pounds. I didn't see a smooth, polished zone blocker. Could he do it at the college level? Sure, but I have not seen that in the NFL. I've seen a guy that has struggled with holds on zone plays because he can't get the position that he needs to. And you've already got Christian Haynes and Satoa Lamea, who I think are much more natural athletes to fit this scheme. They both have what it takes, in my opinion, better to play in this zone blocking scheme. And now you add Gray Zabel. He's going to be your left guard. Bryce Cabledew and Mason Richmond, if Richmond plays guard, both those guys are significantly more agile than what Anthony Bradford is. I just don't know where he fits in. Now, maybe he comes a little bit lighter to training camp and he goes out and wins back his starting job. I'm not going to sit here and say that's impossible, but right now, I've got him on the bubble to make this roster with the moves that have been made just because of the scheme that Seattle runs. To me, in terms of not so lucky, he's been incredibly unfortunate, whether it's just been the change of the offense, the new staff coming in, a lot of the players that are still on the roster, and now who they've added. It's not looking good for Anthony Bradford. And while some fans may say, what are we going to get back in return? He's still only 24 years old. And there may be some teams out there. We know how much teams value offensive linemen, and they're so hard to find. There will be teams out there that'll be looking for gap-oriented blockers that will have interest in him. The question is going to be what you can fetch back in return. I just think he's got things stacked against him right now on a number of fronts.
I think it's a good point. Another player that has another veteran that has a lot kind of stacked up against him is Marquez Valdez-Scantling. To me, I think that MVS, when he signed with the Seahawks, he had to know that Seattle was going to be bringing in some other options at wide receiver. And I'm not going to go so far as to say that I think that he is on the outside looking in as far as making this roster, because as I talked about in so many different occasions, the Seahawks frankly lacked straight line speed at the wide receiver position. Now, Torrey Horton definitely improved that. I mean, when healthy, this guy's going to be running in the 4.3s consistently, even coming off of a knee injury that required a procedure. He still ran a 4.41. So again, he has elite straight line speed and a skill set that's actually similar. I think it's actually an upgrade over Marquez Valdez-Scantling. At the same time, Ricky White III did not run so fast. So again, this is a wide receiver core that I still believe needs MVS's straight line speed, and just the fact that he is an NFL veteran. I don't know that you want to rely too much on 2 rookie wide receivers. That said, I do think that MVS needs to catch the ball cleanly. If he struggles with drops as much as he has in his previous NFL stops, then it's going to be really easy just to become enamored with the upside that is Torrey Horton, or the versatility, the physicality that is Ricky White III as well.
With only 2 draft picks on the defensive side of the football, I didn't see too many players on defense that you could make an argument, well, this player's in a worse position than what he was going into the season or going into the draft. I don't feel that way about Mike Morris, though. To me, this is a put up or shut up time for him. We have been enamored by the potential that he could have in Mike McDonald's defense. He obviously played for him at Michigan. His size, the ability to play big end or 3-tech, but we haven't seen production on the field. He dressed for most of the games last year, but he hardly played. And when he got into the lineup, I can't remember seeing him out there. Apparently he had snaps, but I never remember seeing him do anything. And now you're dealing with the possibility. I think Riley Mills, if you had to ask me to predict right now, I would say there's a better chance that he's back at some point in August than there is that he misses half of the season or more, just based on the things that I've been told since we talked to him. He's way ahead of schedule. He's running already. 8-month recoveries from ACL tears are not abnormal anymore, even for big guys. And Riley Mills is a grinder. He is a football lover. And so I just have a feeling that he is going to be pushing to be back earlier than expected. And if that happens, Riley Mills is already a significantly better athlete than Mike Morris. And you see it on tape. He has that 92nd percentile get off, as the Seahawks pointed out. and he can play inside and out at 291 pounds. He brings more pass rushing. Mike Morris never had 7.5 sacks in the college level. So that would be a big issue. And even if Riley Mills is not able to start the season, I mentioned Jared Ivey earlier, and he has the same build roughly that Morris had coming in. I think that Ivey could easily be a 290-pound defender and play at a high level because athleticism is not what his game's predicated on. And he's 6'6". You can put a little more muscle on him. I look at Ivey way more productive than Mike Morris ever was in college, especially as a pass rusher, violent hands. Jared, I keep wanting to call him Jared. I don't know why, but or is Jared? Jared Ivey. I keep wanting to call him Jaden is what I want to call him. But Jared Ivey has done the things that we thought Mike Morris would do for the Seahawks. He's done it on film. We have seen it. We have not seen it consistently from Mike Morris. So is it possible he could have a year 3 breakout? Absolutely. But it's also possible Mike Morris could be on the way out. If Ivey outplays him and Mills comes back quickly, both those guys could push him off the roster.
Oh, they absolutely could. Mills, I'm very excited about Mills. He was not a player that was on my radar for the Seahawks just because I thought that if they were going to be, going for, players that frankly were not coming off of a knee injury, just suffered just a few months ago. I just didn't think that they were in a position to take such a luxury selection. And then, of course, they Leonard Williams, bring back Jaron Reed, even re-signed Jonathan Hankins here in the last couple of days as well. I thought that they were going to be focusing on a nose guard or more of a traditional stand-up edge rusher. Of course, again, they brought back Jonathan Hankins. Obviously, I considered big winners being that edge rushing group, similar to what we talked about a moment ago with the cornerback group. So clearly the Seahawks feel very good about Derek Hall and Boye Mafe, Uchenna Nwosu coming back. So again, feel very excited about all of that. I think that Mike Morris is a player that had better be on his P's and Q's at this point, just because of the fact that if Riley Mills is healthy, that to me is the $1 million question here. If he is able to get onto the field, then I do think that Mike Morris is going to be right there with Marquez Valdes-Scantling, perhaps on the outside looking in just to keep his own roster spot.
As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. We are going to be coming back tomorrow. Nick Lee will be joining me for a Blue Friday episode. We had to push our interview with Torian Gray to next week, but we will have Bam Bam's former coach and Nick Emanwari's former coach joining us next week on the show, but we'll have plenty to talk about coming out of rookie minicamp day 1 tomorrow. So make sure you listen in and enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Go Hawks.